go back a couple of years. We're both clarinetists. We're friends. We've both been at the Untitled Music. But currently, Megan is the executive director of the Children's Chorus of Greater Dallas. And to top it off this semester, the nonprofit class, a couple of you are in, are working with this organization on a consultation project, and they're going to be pitching to Megan and some board members next week with their findings. But today, Megan is here to talk to us about her career and her experience with the Children's Chorus of Greater Dallas. So let's please welcome Megan Heber.
I was telling Jen right before we started that it's really weird to actually be talking about yourself and your career. You are the first people who have actually officially, formally talked about it too. So it's very exciting and very weird to be doing that. We're going to do two things today, and thank you for being here. I know Thanksgiving's tomorrow. I know you have lots of things to be taken care of. It's the end of the semester, but I'm really excited to talk with you today and kind of tell you the things I wish I had been told at the beginning of my career. So hopefully something will resonate with you. Hopefully something will, I don't want to go as far as to say inspire because I don't think I'm at that level, but I hope something sticks with you and that you find some sort of tidbits of useful information today. We're gonna do the presentation in basically two big parts. So the first one, which we'll go quickly through, is my background, how I ended up being an executive director of a nonprofit. And then the second part, I want you to actually experience some of the most important things I think that nonprofits, entrepreneurs, business people can really benefit from, which is how do you build relevance about what you're doing, and how do you tell those stories to different funders, to different audiences? How do you communicate what you do with other people? So we'll use Children's Chorus as a case study of that, as a quick example, and then we'll do a couple of little activities, which is why you have those papers. So, that's me. Megan Heber, please call me Megan. My mom is Mrs. Heber. It's weird. I've had 15 years of experience between government, military, higher education, nonprofit management, executive management, all those kind of stuff. I'm currently, as Jen said, the executive director of the Children's Chorus of Greater Dallas, and I've been there for just about 2 years now. I have kind of a weird conglomerate of degrees, so I thought I'd just mention them. I started out as a music education major. That was my goal in life, was to teach music. So I got my BM and BA in music education and education from a small public school in South Jersey called Rowan University. Really great music ed program, and honestly, one of the greatest experiences of my life to have gone to that college. When I was in the military, which we'll talk about in a second, I got my BS in organizational leadership because I realized I really didn't know anything about how to be a leader, how to organize a business, how to do any of that. Then about 4 years ago, I started doing a dual master's degree down at SMU, which is an MA in arts management and my MBA. For my MBA, I had 2 minors, one in strategy on entrepreneurship and then another one in marketing. So that's kind of my educational background for you. What I do now as an executive director for a nonprofit, I'm really lucky because I get to serve on a lot of committees that are making a big difference in the Dallas area in arts and culture. So I'm able to serve on the DFW Nonprofit CEO Council. I'm on the City of Dallas Office of Cultural Affairs. They just changed their name to Arts and Culture, and I'm still not used to that. We're doing their cultural plan and how to actually implement it to make Dallas much more receptive to arts and culture. And then over at Nonprofit Leadership Studies here at UNT, I serve on their advisory council. So we are creating a new curriculum for a nonprofit leadership degree program. A whole bunch of other stuff. We don't have to go into it. The point of it is what you're thinking you might do right now as you're sitting here may not be what you end up doing. And that's okay. And that's expected. And all of life is really unpredictable at the end of looking back, but in hindsight, it all kind of makes sense. So embrace the crazy, embrace the weird things that happen to you, and know that you're going the way you need to go. So for me, because of all these different backgrounds, I've been able to do a lot of cool projects on the way. First, I'm doing my own startup right now on the side called Entrepreneurship, which is going to merge my MBA side and my artist side to really teach artists how to build sustainable creative careers. So if you don't know how to do marketing, if you don't know how to do accounting, all those things when I started my MBA that I didn't even know existed or I didn't know what that word was, we're working on building a platform merge those two different skill sets. I was able to work with Impact Hub Milano. I was over in Milan, Italy for about 6 months, 2 years ago as part of my degree program. And we did a startup technology company that we were able to assist in making a business plan for, and I think they just launched about a year ago in the Italian market. Basically a watch that tracks all kinds of stuff, and it was really cool, but we got to do this return on social investment. It's kind of a hybrid, for-profit, non-profit, how do you merge those two kinds of growth? So as a cool project, I've worked with UNESCO World Heritage Site in Mantua and Savignetta, Italy. We did a new tourism and cultural plan for them, another cool experience. And then Data Arts, which if you haven't looked at Data Arts, check them out. Their website is really robust. They take all of the 990s that nonprofits are required by IRS to submit. They conglomerate and kind of merge all that data together, and then they find trends and different statistical analysis about what makes an organization successful, what makes an organization not really successful. So they're trying to determine like what actually drives success for nonprofit organizations, all focused on the arts. So I was able to do a research assistant for them for about a year and did lots of data merging, analytics, linear and nonlinear programming, which I didn't even know were words before I did my MBA, but it's weird, it's cool. So first part about me and my career progression to kind of explain how I ended up here. Ooh, there we go. So I started off cleaning rental instruments. That was my job for 6 years in high school. Every summer, all those nasty rental instruments that went out to middle schools, elementary schools, they came back, and it was my job and my sister's job to clean them. So we scrubbed them, we took reeds off them, sometimes had to pry reeds off for the kids who didn't remove a reed all year. And that's where I started. That was the very beginning. And from there, like I said, I became a music education major in college and was convinced that I was going to be a music teacher at the end of those 4 years. Because I'm going to keep doing that. I am consistent in many else. I graduated young, so I was 21 at the end of graduation and finished my student teaching, did everything. It was 2008, so all that economic things were also happening. And I just had this innate feeling and knowledge of myself that I knew as soon as I settled into a music education program and was a teacher, I would dedicate my life to that, and that would become my entire life. At 21, I was feeling a little wanderlust, and I'd been born in New Jersey, raised in New Jersey, college in New Jersey. I kind of wanted to get out of New Jersey for a while. So I started looking at what options I could do after I just spent 4 years working on this music education degree, with all intentions of later on returning to music education. I was very lucky that my college band director was the retired commander for the Navy band in Washington, D.C. So we started talking about the military music programs as a possible alternative for me. Since they're 5-year stints, you don't have to continue re-upping, so it could be an interesting possibility. And he told me that there were some auditions coming up for the Navy music program that he thought I was good enough to win a spot, and why not try that and see how that goes. So after college graduation, that's what I did. At that point, you had to have 2 instruments. So you had to have a primary and a secondary. So I had clarinet done, primary. But I didn't really know saxophone well, minus a couple ped classes. So in about 4 months, I had to learn saxophone and also audition on saxophone, which was not recommended to learn any instrument in 4 months. It is not enough time. But I was able to win that spot, win that audition, and so about 6 months after undergrad, I shipped off to boot camp. It's the same boot camp as the rest of the Navy, and you spend about 3 months up at Great Lakes doing all that. After that, you go to training school, and then you get your first assignments. So I spent 5 years in the military as a musician. I was stationed in Norfolk, I was stationed in Pearl Harbor for 3 years, and then New Orleans, Louisiana. So wanderlust, check. I got my travel, I got my adventure, but I knew I wasn't going to do more than 5 years, so it was kind of time to figure out the next thing that I wanted to do, which was part of the reason I started doing that organizational leadership degree, was to kind of build those competencies if I wanted to go into arts management, into arts administration, which is what I did. I was offered, at the end of my enlistment, I was offered a position here at UNT College of Music. I managed the Murchison for about 2.5 years, so that was my job, was managing all of the contracts, all of the productions, all the staff over there. And then about 2.5 years into that position, I started getting the bug again about going back to school. And that's when I decided to do the dual master's degree from SMU part-time. So they let me do it on a part-time basis, flex my time over there, so full-time over at the MPAC, part-time down at SMU. And that's when I started really falling in love with marketing, with strategy, with all of those really important entrepreneurial skills that I had never thought about, experienced, or knew anything about before. At that time, the director of marketing position here at the College of Music opened up. So I applied for it thinking it would be a great way to actually do kind of a living learning laboratory. So take my marketing classes down at SMU, come back up here, and immediately start implementing everything. So I did that for another 2.5 years, and then shipped off to Milan, Italy for those 4 to 6 months as the last part of that degree program. While I was over there, I had a friend, a mentor, who recommended me for the executive director position for children's chorus, and I actually did most of my interviews via Skype when I was over in Italy, came back, was offered that position, and then have been there for about 2 years. So that's kind of how my journey so far has gone in my career. Completely unexpected. If you had asked Megan 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I would never have thought any of these positions would be something I would ever do. But now looking in hindsight and looking at the progression, they make sense. They just wouldn't have made sense in the moment. Each time I made a career change, I thought it was a risk, and I was scared, and I was unsure of my own abilities. If any of you ever suffer from imposter syndrome, I'm there with you all the time. But it really shows that if you work hard, if you continue to learn, if you push yourself, then you're really able to kind of invent a career that fulfills you. Whew. Almost done talking about myself, thank goodness. So a couple key lessons I learned on the way that I thought would be helpful for all of you is work hard but still play. Make sure to take trips, read books, have that downtime so that you're constantly re-energizing yourself and not getting burned out by your work. The work will always be there, never ends. Make sure you take time to play. Avoid being paralyzed by fear. Every time I did a career shift, I was terrified that it was the wrong position, it was the wrong job, I would be incapable, I'd be wrong. Getting over that fear and really pushing yourself to the next position, to the next level, was very beneficial for me. Have a path but be flexible. Again, music ed major, instrument repair, cleaner person. Never thought I would be leading a nonprofit organization. Never thought I'd be balancing budgets and P&L statements and all that kind of stuff. Never thought it. But it happens. Don't let others manage your career. When you're in a position, it's really easy for that employer to be focused on you developing the skills you need to be the best employee in that position. But while that's great, you also have to be thinking about what's your next step, what's your next aspiration, and start building the skills so that when you're ready to leave your current position, you've got the skills you need for the next. So make sure you're managing your own career. Fight for happiness. Some days are going to be good, some days are going to be bad. Just comes with the territory, but make sure that if you feel content, not necessarily happy all the time, but make sure you're trying to achieve that for yourself. Learn something new every day. The more I learn, the more different things I read, the more I realize how little I actually know about most things. So try to challenge yourself to learn something new every day. Don't tie your self-worth to your job. That is not who you are. You are a person, you are a human being, you have your own emotions and feelings and things that you're dealing with. It is not, even though jobs are important, make sure that you're not tying your self-worth. There's a lot of weird external things that can happen with a job that is not reflective of who you are as a person. Slay the dragon, whatever the dragon might be, whether it's work, whether it's a task that needs to be done, whether it's marketing e-blasts that you've just been putting off. Just slay the dragon, keep going, and push yourself. Market yourself. No one else is going to market yourself for you. No one honestly cares to market yourself. So make sure you're positioning yourself, you're differentiating yourself, and you know your internal brand and your internal image that you want to promote out. And it's your responsibility to market that to the world. And then finally, you are the CEO of your life. at the end of the day, you're the one making the decisions, you're the one who are making the next steps and the plans. So just make it a good life. Okay, 2 tips that have helped me every time I've transitioned into a new position that I wanted to share with you guys. The first one is job postings. So go home, look at, if you're into arts management at least, Center for Nonprofit Management, Musical America, Texas Commission on the Arts, they all have these robust job boards. Go find 5 or 10 jobs that you would love to have, that you would, aspirational or not, you would be, that would be like your top pick if you could have a job tomorrow. Look at what they're requiring, look at the skills, look at the qualifications, highlight what you have, and then take notice of what you don't have. Whatever you don't have, there's time now to get those skills and get those experiences. So if you can do volunteer work to do that, you can serve on committees. Every nonprofit always needs good, strong people to help out. Or you can ask your job, whatever you're doing now, whether it's part-time, even if it's waitressing, if it's in the food services, if it's in retail, you can talk with your employer and help them customize a job plan to get you certain skills. So if you don't really have skills leading people, ask them to give you a small team. Work with them to make sure that you have the skills you need so that when you're ready to apply for these positions, your resume is strong and you're ready for it. Similar to that is bio hunting. So think again of these aspirational people that you want to be. Hunt down their bios, see what they've done, see where they've gone, and then again, figure out what you have, what you don't have, and figure out that way to mitigate that gap. So how could you become more like these aspirational people you have? These are both things I've done in the times where I knew I was going to transition, and they've been very helpful and made me feel ready to apply for the positions when I needed to. And finally, don't forget your uniqueness. I'm done talking about myself. Thank goodness. You guys are tenacious. You have focus. You're patient. You have listening skills. You have been taught critical thinking and analysis like no one else. Every time your teacher is working with you, every time you're at studio listening to recitals, those are all important skills that every employer needs to have. So don't forget about that uniqueness. If you stay in music, if you decide to not do music, if you're doing entrepreneurship, all of these things are not things that are going to be lost. They're going to make you stronger applicants for whatever career path you decide to choose. Just don't forget to focus on them. Okay, much more comfortable talking about not me. So building relevancy. Relevancy and storytelling in every sector I've worked in, so government, military, higher education, nonprofits, it is the key to making people understand what you're doing and then to get them to buy into what you're doing. We're going to do a little bit of information about children's chorus. I apologize for those who are in the class who know this a lot. And then we're going to move into an exercise that kind of applies a couple of relevancy and storytelling practices to it so that you get to experience this before we leave today. So Children's Chorus of Greater Dallas, we are 23 years old. We are the largest in the Southwest. We have about $1 million annual budget and 2,400 plus alumni. So it's a pretty significant organization. We are the official children's chorus of the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. So anytime you see children singing with the symphony, we train them, we get ready for them. Those are our children. We serve the 4th through 12th grade and about 500 students in our main core program. So it's pretty large. The only 2 bigger than us in the nation is the LA Children's Chorus and the Chicago Children's Chorus, so we're number 3. Our mission has 2 main pillars. It's artistic excellence and then representing Dallas's ethnic and economic diversity. That has been the mission statement since the beginning for 23 years, and those are kind of the 2 pillars that we build everything else on. We have 4 main initiatives that we do this by. We have an out-of-school training program, which is our chorus program. We have 2 free in-school choruses, so we go into a neighborhood chorus in West Dallas and provide all the music education for them. Then we have community outreach performances, and we do a lot of free resources and training for music educators. Although they're really different, they all have a unified guiding belief that every child is an artist, and it is our responsibility to provide tools and teaching and training to make them realize that they're an artist and to bring out those skills in all We have 97% acceptance rate. So even though we're large, even though we're prestigious, we try to accommodate and accept almost every child who auditions. The 3% I get asked often is, well, who doesn't get in? And normally it's a behavior issue, or they apparently are only there because their parents are making them there. So there has to be a willingness on the side of the child. We do not accept them if they can't really match pitch well, if they don't know how to read music. We can teach them all of that. We have about 1,000 singers a year when you put in all of our community engagement programs, and it is spread all throughout Dallas. So it's an 80-mile distance as far north as Gunter and as far south as Waxahachie. So we're serving about 48 communities every year. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so we received that IRS designation in 1997. Since we're approved as tax exempt, we provide, the goal of that for the government is that we're providing a public benefit, and the government is basically outsourcing it to nonprofits. That's why there's that 501c3 designation. We're governed by a board of directors who, right now it's 20, but we have a maximum of 25 allowed audience. And then our finances. So revenue is pretty split evenly. It's like 51% and 49%. 49% contributed revenue, so donations from individuals, corporations, and foundations. The other 51% is earned revenue, so tuition, tickets, and merchandise. On our expense side, the big expense, as you can see, is personnel. So we pay all of our accompanists, all of our assistant conductors, all of our conductors. Everybody is paid. It's not volunteer-based. So we have about 30 employees, and that's why expenses are significant expense every year. So obviously with 49% of our revenue coming from contributed revenue, it's really important to our business model. And it's probably going to be important to all of your business models if you do the arts management, if you do arts entrepreneurship. That 501c3 designation really relies on contributed revenue. When I took over as ED, we were able to significantly increase contributed revenue in just 1 year. So we raised about an additional $75,000 in that first year, an increase of 21%. So how did we do that? Quickly and efficiently, and have been able to sustain and keep growing that. Again, it's all about relevancy and storytelling. Beforehand, a lot of our marketing, a lot of our materials, a lot of our pitches all focused on, well, we teach kids to sing. And that was kind of the end of the pitch. So for someone who had no experience in the arts, had no experience in music, it was difficult for them to understand the benefits of that and to understand why they should be interested or invest in us. So when you start thinking about whatever you're building stories and trying to build relevancy about, it's really important to think about your audience, to think about who they are, what they know, and then craft stories about that, which is what we're going to practice in just a few minutes. To get to the heart of a really compelling story, you need to always ask yourself 2 questions. And knowing the answers are really critical, but most of the time they get overlooked. The first question, like I just mentioned, is who is your audience? Who are you talking to? What motivates them? What are they looking to? What inspires them? So who really is your audience? And then after you share your story, what do you want them to feel? What do you want them to think about? What action do you want them to take? It'll be different for every audience, it'll be different for every person. But your job is to bridge that gap and to learn so much about who you're talking about that you can transition them into thinking, feeling, and acting the way that you want them to do. So I know it kind of do seem pretty obvious, but time and time again, I find that both of these questions tend to be overlooked, and you kind of revert back to, well, we teach kids how to sing. Yes, we teach kids how to sing, but we do a whole lot more. I once assisted an organization that was trying to raise money for a community rebuild, and we had to go to a whole bunch of presidents and vice presidents of a credit union. And the initial thought was, well, we'll tell them how families will have a safe place to live, and there's going to be a roof over their heads, and all these wonderful intrinsic things that'll motivate them. And then we took a step back and we realized, well, presidents and vice presidents of credit unions, this is probably not the story that they're going to be interested in. They want to know about economic development. They want to know about what businesses this revitalization will be able to bring in. So we were able to shift the story from that initial thought, that initial gut reaction, and shift it to a story that actually made sense for the audience that we were talking to. And we did get the funding, it worked, and we're continuing to build it out. But by knowing about them taking that time, analyzing it, thinking from their perspective, that's when we were able to create a story that really resonated with them, building that relevance, building that storytelling. So if you have a specific purpose, then you can craft that story to elicit the response you need. Many people tell very engaging stories, they just don't lead the audience anywhere. So when you're doing these stories, when you're thinking about your pitches, you want to lead your audience somewhere. You want, say if you're doing a pitch deck and you're pitching your startup, you want them to leave saying, I want to invest in this, I want to support this, I want to do whatever I can to make this go off the ground. So how do you get from audience to there? You got to think about your audience. So the differentiation part is what makes you unique, what makes you unique, what makes you special, what makes you different from all of your, in quotations, competitors. Because I know as artists, we don't like to think about that we have competitors. As nonprofits, we hate using the word competitors. But at the end of the day, there's certain organizations that are vying for the same funding that you are. So for us, in some aspects, hate using the word competitors, but you do have to think about what attributes you have that other people don't have. So I'm going to quickly tell you about 3 of the children's course differentiators we use when we're pitching to organizations about what makes us different, why they should support us, and why we're important for the community. And then we're going to get you guys into the exercise to help think about relevancy and think about what organizations and what things we could do to pitch the examples you have on your sheet. So differentiation for children's course, and this is how we phrase it. The first one is we have few barriers to participation. Every child has a voice. They don't need equipment, they don't need instruments, they don't need any previous training. Every child comes preloaded with a voice. We are committed, in addition to that, to eliminating financial barriers. So we provide extensive tuition assistance up to $45,000 a year. So if you don't have the money, if you don't have the means, you can still participate in the program. And then finally, 90% of our tuition assistance applicants receive aid. So we are doing whatever we can to eliminate as many barriers as we can to arts participation. That's our number 1 differentiator. Our second one is being sustained and authentic. We are not a bus everybody in for one concert, bus everybody out and never see them, never interact with them again. That is not what we do as an organization. We provide deep and meaningful arts experiences that are sustained and authentic. Every year, our artistic staff delivers more than 38,000 student teaching hours, which averages to about 60 learning hours per student. We have about an 80% retention rate, so once our kids are getting into the program, they're staying in the program and coming back. Many of the children who participate with us, this is the one consistent thing they do throughout their whole childhood. As I mentioned, we serve grades 4 through 12, so we have a number of students who we call lifers who start in 4th grade as a little itty bitty and go all the way up into high school graduation. So they spend 9 years of their childhood, half of their childhood, at Monday night rehearsals with us, which you don't really get in many other organizations, even schools. You're still shifting schools every 4 years or so. So second differentiator, sustained and authentic. The third is collaborators. So we look at expanding the Dallas arts ecosystem and taking it a step further. We do this through partnerships and collaborations. Our concerts are held at the Meyerson. One is on Sunday if anybody wants to come, just a shameless plug. But as you can imagine, you have these 6 choruses from 80 to 100 kids. They've got to get the chorus on stage, they've got to get everybody ready. Then you sing, you do your performance, you got to get everybody off. Then you got to get the next chorus on. Then you got to get them off over and over and over and over again until all 6 choruses have performed. So there's dead time. There's this weird 3 to 4 minute space in between each chorus as we're moving them on and off. Our artistic director, by her friend who was attending a concert, who said your concerts are boring. The singers sing beautifully, but those 2 to 3 minute gaps are just boring. Can you do anything about it? So she came up with what we call the Interlude Project. And this is when we look at the season's theme, we look at the concert's theme, we look at the repertoire that everybody is singing, and we bring in guest artists that will illuminate a different part of that theme. So, for example, we did a concert a couple years ago about science and nature, and we brought in scientists from UT Southwestern to do experiments on stage in between in those 2 to 3 minutes. Then we had a storyteller who would do a progressive story, and every interlude, every break, it would make the story a little further along. So what we're trying to do is, parents are busy, kids are busy, they're not necessarily going to the symphony, they're not necessarily going to these things that require a commitment of time. But we have them, and they're already committed to us, they're already participating with us, so what can we do to bring all these wonderful professional adult organizations and showcase it to them while they're sitting with us? So it's something unique. We don't really know of any other organization who kind of structures their organization or their concerts this way, which makes it a key differentiator for us. Okay, I'm done talking just about. So that's 3 ways we talk about differentiation, which is critical for building relevancy, for building your storytelling. Now we're going to do an exercise about kind of looking at it of the lens of who is your audience, what do you want them to feel, what kind of data, what kind of things would inspire them to act. So on your sheets, and I'd like you to work in pairs if possible, on your sheets you have 4 questions. We're going to tackle each of these questions with each of the examples. Each of the examples on the slides, each slide deck, is an actual slide that we use at a presentation at a specific contributed revenue source. So each one is real, each one worked, but each one is for somebody different. So what I'd like you to do, we're going to take 2 minutes on each one and then talk about it together, move on to the next one, take 2 minutes, talk with your partner about it, and then we'll talk about it as a group. But I would like you to look at, so we'll start with slide 1, that example 1. What is the slide trying to communicate? So if I did a decent job, we should kind of get what the slide is trying to communicate. What kind of contributed revenue giver would be potentially interested and appeal to them? So is this for an individual? Is this for a corporation? Is this for a foundation or government entity? What message, what story that is shown on that slide, who would that be interesting to? Third, why would they care? And then 4th, if you have a guess specifically about who this is actually for. So the first one, here's the questions. This is the first one, it's exercise number 1 that's labeled Singer Impact. And like I said, if you could turn to a partner, chat for maybe about 2 minutes, and then we'll come together and see what kind of ideas you have about this based on those 4 questions. So what the heck is the slide saying? Number 1. Yeah, there's all these great benefits about participating in the arts, and it specifically compares if you have low arts participation versus high arts participation. You are more likely to get a bachelor's degree. You're more likely to have a professional career. You're more likely to volunteer and be civically engaged in your community. So we're talking about individual benefits, this slide. So how does it impact the individual? Who would be interested in this story? Government could be. Any other ideas? Who would care what happens to the kids? Parents. And that's, for this one, that's actually specifically what we used. It was a parent who had high capacity and high propensity to give to philanthropic causes. So we talked to the parent because we knew they were really, what motivated them, what they were interested in is their child. So what benefits that their child is going to experience, what benefits other children are going to experience, that's their motivators, that's their feeling. So this one was specifically designed to inspire parents, one parent in particular. So, but the nice thing is there also is no right or wrong answer, and you can utilize it and sway it and talk about it for different people. Like we actually use it for a government grant too. So, okay, number 2. This one, with the brain on it. So you have about, let's do a minute and a half so I can keep to time. Same 4 questions. All right, what does the slide say? What am I trying to communicate? Any ideas?
Jason, what do you think?
I think this is communicating that creativity creates more problem-solving capacity.
It's definitely part of it. Anything else?
Rachel.
Creative folks are very employable.
Very employable. So, leading into the next question, who would be interested in that?
This is a corporate thing, isn't it?
This is a corporate one. I was telling Jen that there was one thing blocked out on this because I didn't want to give away too much. So, do you guys know what the big discussion is with the creative economy and with the job workforce right now? The different models of education. So STEM versus STEAM, right, is kind of the big talking points. Science, technology, engineering, math for STEM, and then the additional of arts on the STEAM side. So this, it did say on the left-hand side was STEM, the right-hand side was STEAM. So who would really care about workforce development? We talked, it's corporations, so workforce development, why do they care? Why do they care if people have STEM versus STEAM? Why do they care if people are creative?
Or creative, you can be to solve problems. You can possibly be more efficient, which means you get less people, which means you get more money.
Yeah. And look at the economy ourselves, how much entrepreneurship, technology-based, all of those things. At the core, like Steve Jobs was a creative. He's a creative who was able to implement a vision and design a vision. So creativity, when you're focusing on just STEM and kind of have axed the arts out of it, there's no way to really develop that creative side of a young adult. Any guesses on who specifically this was for? It is headquartered in DFW, and it probably is not a company you think would have any interest in investing in a children's chorus. No, but good guess.
Southwest.
No, but good guess. Good context clues. Who would be really interested in STEM?
Is Intel?
Not Intel, but you're right on the right track.
We all did calculators.
Calculators.
Was it Texas Instruments?
Texas Instruments, yeah, based here in Dallas. Who Texas Instruments and Children's Chorus doesn't really make sense and doesn't really, on the surface, make any logical sense. But our pitch, they invest heavily into STEM, and our pitch was to tell them about why they should actually be investing in STEAM and why they should give to us and donate to us to make sure that they have the employees they need in the future. So it did work. All 3 of these were success stories. I did not include any of my failure bad slides. So number 3, and we'll go through this one really fast, like in 30 seconds, because I want to keep you guys to the time. So 30 seconds, go ahead, arts ecosystems, impact. I think this is my original one.
Blue like an education foundation, something producing to
Okay, what does the slide mean? Go ahead.
Does this mean if you're more involved as a kid, wherever you live, if you stay there, you'll be more involved as an adult?
Yes, that's part of it. And what did the bars mean?
I didn't get there.
Can you clarify what a benchmark arts activity is?
Benchmark arts activity is defined by the National Endowment for the Arts. It's basically theater, dance, music, anything that you associate with like adult professional arts organizations, that's a benchmark arts activity. So this, because we're running out of time and I want to let you guys go have Thanksgiving, this one is all about the decreased number of adults participating in arts activities as adults. So it is decreasing starting at 2002. You see the big long bar line, 2008, 2012. Like, we're having significant decreases in adults going to the symphony, going to the orchestras, going to the theaters. And even though the percentages are not big difference, so it goes from 39% down to 33%, our US population right now is around 300 million. So 6% of 300 million, we're kind of having a big problem. So the percentage might seem small, but when you aggregate it out to actual people, it is a huge, big problem in the arts world right now, is audience development, audience engagement. How do we get millennials? How do we get empty nesters? How do we get all these people participating in the arts? So this slide was all about, well, you can't just fix it by fancy marketing. You have to start early, you have to start at the root of the problem, which is arts education for children. So if you're not giving arts education to children, that's what all those bullet points are, is when children participate in the arts, they're 4 times more as likely as adults to go to these activities, these benchmark activities. So if you start providing strong arts education, you'll have a bigger arts ecosystem in the future. So I'm over time, but anyone have a guess who would be interested in this?
Probably a foundation.
Foundations, a lot of. Is there a specific one that you can think of that is really, really, the arts ecosystem is the most important thing to them? And developing, making sure that adult attendees go, that we have a strong arts ecosystem. Any ideas of who would be really interested in that?
Would this be like the partners that you have, like the Dallas Symphony, the DMA, and that kind of stuff?
It could be. For us, this one was all about the Office of Arts and Culture down in Dallas. So they are the biggest arts funder in Dallas. They give us $55,000 a year, by far our biggest foundation. So making sure that they see our value and then comparing us when we're fighting for, again, I hate that word fighting and competitors, but when we're up against the symphony, when we're up against the theater, when we're up against the museum for the same funding dollars, telling that story of, well, we're important to them too. So really making us a bigger part of the arts ecosystem and getting us away from, well, we just teach kids to sing. So I'm over time. I'm sorry. This has been great. Please, if you have any questions, I'll hang around. If you want to talk about career or relevancy or storytelling, happy to hang out, and you can give them my email too. So, but thank you for coming, even though it's